Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of Westworld. A great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, it's interesting because obviously we're kind of picking up after everything last episode, and obviously Dolores, that little monologue where basically she was made to see like the beauty in this world. Like there's a lot of ugly, but there's also a lot of beauty to it, and she was made to kind of be able to see that. But she kind of talks about starting no longer seeing that there is no beauty, because basically she went from one role to the next. Every role was some part of some grand design that she was a part of and everything, and now for her it's only going to end one way, and she's going to be the one to write the ending. And obviously by the time Sirach's people actually get there, Dolores's spear is gone because Caleb took it with her. And obviously he's following Solomon's lead, and it ends up leading him to like this case and then like behind some locked doors and stuff. Like him unlocking those doors with like the phone and everything, it made me feel like some like watchdog type of stuff. But I was like, it's going to be a Dolores body in there. And lo and behold, and she was like, I didn't actually know if you would actually going to like bring me back. She's like, I kind of probably was hopeful, but I didn't know if you actually would. And for him, it's like, now he's starting to think it's not just real bomb I have to worry about. You too. You have been pulling my strings the entire life. It's like all this fight of, and all this talk about me being free and stuff like that. But aren't you manipulating my choices as well? Like, you know, because he starts to wonder like, I mean, it gets very existential. Like, do I have any choice or part to play in all of this? Like, why did you pick me? And then she's like, yeah, but the fact of the matter is, like, since that moment they met, like, your decision to help me and whatnot, if I didn't have this pretty face, if I didn't have this face, if I didn't have this skin, would you have helped me? She's like, don't question my motives for why I chose you and why I'm doing this, and I won't question your motives for why you've kind of been along the ride as well, so it is a complicated thing of like what the clear-cut thing is. Still, we didn't know at least at that time what Dolores wanted, so it's interesting, like, to kind of see it all, like, unfold as they kind of get ready to make their moves, paying people to help them. And I love that she kind of gets the middle finger from Charlotte, because it's so interesting that, this Dolores is still on the path. Every other version of Dolores is still on the path except for Charlotte, because she's like, no, I should be thanking you because I lost my family. It made me realize, it basically gave her clarity that they were a weakness. So she's being held back by stuff that kept her chained up. So now it's like, I'm going to be completely free. I need to kind of get rid of all my weaknesses. She's like, and that even includes you, Dolores. And so has like someone there to try and kill her. And even Caleb being like, were these sent by Sirach? And she's like, no, sent by me. And she's like, all right, offer the sniper. Find out what Charlotte's offering him. All right, offer him more to kill his buddies and walk away. He pops his buddy, bounces. They get more help and stuff like that. At the same time, there's a whole thing with William, Bernard, and Stubbs. Once again, your boy thinking himself as the hero. He's like, I'm going to, save the world, because he's like, obviously for him, it's like, this all started with me and Dolores. Me and Dolores go way, way back. I mean, it is interesting to think about, like, William's start was with Dolores as well. She's the beginning of everything, and like, obviously William's also the beginning of everything too. So for him, it's like, I'm correcting my mistake because of the history between me and Dolores, so I'm going to want to stop everything. Bernard switches kind of like his humanity off and kind of starts kicking William's ass, and lo and behold, some people showed up. I was like, oh, this isn't going to be good. But turns out one of them takes off his helmet. I was like, who is it going to be? And it's freaking Lawrence. I'm like, yeah. But it's like, oh, it's not actual Lawrence. It's Dolores inside of Lawrence. It's like, is that the last surprise? Is that the last other version of Dolores? Which, I'm jumping ahead. That's a version of Dolores we still don't know where. I'm also curious, like, what did Charlotte do with Connell's? Like, did she destroy that version of Dolores, or does she still exist in some shape or form? That begs into question about something later on, but we'll get to that soon enough. But I thought that was kind of interesting. And Lawrence, or rather Dolores, gives Bernard a case, because he's like, I'm going to stop you. He's like, I don't want to have to play any part of what you got planned. But it's like, you've been playing your part the entire time, and it's a very important role. It's like, a lot of stuff is coming this way, you better prepare yourself, essentially. So obviously, Dolores, has to make sure Caleb keeps going, because it's like he's like, this looks like the apocalypse. This doesn't look like, us saving the world. And she's like, well, basically you got to tear things down before you can kind of build them back up. It's like, this is what things kind of look like. So she ends up giving Caleb time to escape, and she ends up facing off against Maeve again, And last time Maeve referenced her kind of like Dolores corrupting someone, I was under the impression she was talking about Teddy, but maybe she was talking about William, because this case she's like, oh, what are your plans with him? Are you going to make him into another William? And Dolores kind of looked almost like irritated that Maeve made that suggestion. But that made me wonder, when she was talking about corrupting someone last episode, was it just Teddy? I was assuming so, but was she talking about William? I mean, truth be told, I think there's the parallels you can create between what happened with William and what she kind of made Teddy into in season 2. Like, I think you can definitely see layers to that. So, but either way, like, she's still saying, Dolores is like, we don't have to be on opposite sides of each other, like. And Dolores going all badass, like obviously single-handedly taking people down. It's like, it's so cool to see like Dolores go all badass like that and just like single-handedly taking people down. Even that last guy, she's like jumped him off the bridge and she shot him in the head, and then they landed on top of the car. But Maeve just kind of like, she almost looks irritated, like, all right, don't send idiots to do a job that I'm supposed to be doing. I guess I'm gonna have to be the one to handle this. So her and Dolores get into a fight, because it's like, for her, it's like, you don't want this fight because you already saw how things kind of turned out last time I won the fight. So it's like, of course you don't want a repeat of that. So it turns into a fight, and honestly, despite everything, Dolores ended up winning. And she brought up some interesting stuff I'd never really thought about, because she's like, because Maeve is like, oh, you just want to make more versions of you, and Maeve is like, but Dolores is like, you all are me. Like, I am the original. Like, all other originals fail. Every host, every AI after me was built upon me, so basically you're all me. Which in a sense, I was like, so Dolores is the mother and you're all her children. And in her fighting Maeve, I'm like, she's kind of fighting, you're fighting for your daughter. In a weird way, Maeve is fighting her daughter, because she's fighting for her children to a certain extent, When you actually kind of think about it. And as she was about to escape, Charlotte kind of stops her. It's like, I was you at one point in time, but now she's kind of followed her own path. And once again, wants to remove her from the equation, because like, I know all your plans and stuff like that. I've just consolidated everything. So she ends up kind of shutting Dolores down, and Maeve ends up capturing her. And the fact of the matter is, I skipped over it a little bit, but like, even like Caleb was like, why are these people calling me sir? And Dolores like, every revolution needs a leader. I'm like, oh, so Caleb has been set up as that. And it's like, as he's walking, he sees all these other people, like the way the streets are lined up and people there helping him. He ends up running into that other dude and Lena Waithe's character. And it's like, it's weird that this revolution is happening around him, and his job is to go to Rehoboam and shut it down once and for all, to give, so, because at the end of the day, like, he has a choice to make is what this all comes down to, because he kind of felt like up till now he didn't have a choice, but at the end of the day, he has a choice. It comes down, this all plays out to how he decides to handle it. So obviously, when the time came, he ended up going into, getting to Insight, but ends up getting captured. Obviously, he finds out Dolores has been captured too. And sadly, Sirach is like, until he gets the key, because the fact of the matter is Dolores won't hand it over. He's slowly, one by one, deleting her memories. And it's like, that's like heartbreaking to see. And like, you can tell, like, it probably bothers Maeve, but obviously Maeve's got her reason for this fight as well. And obviously, for Caleb, he thinks like, oh, he's setting humanity free, but Sirach is like, oh no, let me show you what the truth is of what Dolores has set up. And it's like, mass casualty event, and then eventually, like, what was it, in 50 to 126 years would be the end of humanity. It's like, that's what this has all been about, ending humanity. And that has always been Dolores' plan, and you've kind of played into it. Like, the fact of the matter is, you want to fight against this system, but like, she's manipulated you and played you the entire time as well. Because it was interesting, because like, this is the first, like, obviously, like, this was also the first time Caleb and Maeve were able to actually kind of talk too, because she was like, oh, because at first she was kind of impressed because it's like, oh, like he killed that guy that was trying to stop him, but also, you know, it is also kind of a little bit disappointing because like you weren't able to, like, oh, like Dolores kind of seemed like she put all her hopes into you, this one person, and that was the big $1,000,000 question: why Caleb? And even he was saying like, oh, the reason why she chose you is because she plans on wiping out humanity. Why not give someone who's predisposed to like act out of violence? When they're when push comes to shove, they turn violent, they go straight to violence. He's like, and that's what Sirach's saying, like, oh, that's why Dolores chose you. That's what this has all been about. And so, but it turns out Dolores doesn't have the key that any of them were looking for, whether it be Maeve or Sirach. So, and at the end, it was interesting because Maeve ends up finding out, because she ends up hearing something, and it turns out, and like the whole thing about like I said, there's meta upon meta about this, because obviously for so long the hosts have been, you know, puppeteered by other people, and it turns out Sirach has been the entire time, like every word out of Sirach's mouth, every action he's ever made, it's never been a thing of like, oh, I'm doing this on my own, like, oh, Rehoboam is doing its thing and I'm following through. It's like, no, I am literally Rehoboam's circuit. I am his voice. He speaks through me. Like every word he's saying is just what Rehoboam tells him. And so she's like, I can't believe I never saw you for the puppet that you are. But for him, he gave himself over willing to Rehoboam because he believed, oh, I'm doing what's right for the world. Like the fact of the matter is we as humans can't be trusted. So he believes so wholeheartedly in what. So it makes you wonder, at what point in time did he become Rehoboam's? Was it like before his brother? Like at what point did he become, like, did Rehoboam just become the one that's actually in control? It's like he believes in the system so wholeheartedly, he gave it the keys to the castle, because even him, like I said, every move he's made, every word he's ever uttered has been a part of Rehoboam, like literally verbatim speaking its words. So, and it's so interesting because he's stringing, you know, Maeve along, talking about them being what they are, when in actuality he's just a puppet himself. I mean, what did Dolores say? Dolores said, like, you doing this isn't going to make you free. Hell, even Sirach isn't free. And it's just, I don't know if at that time Dolores knew that, or she just thought he was a slave to this whole thing as well. Like, you know, I don't know if she knew to that level, because, I mean, when you actually break it down, like, Sirach was always kind of a slave to this system because he was following through with, like, this utopia he's trying to create, that Rehoboam suggested that this is what we do to kind of keep humanity in line, to subside the chaos and stuff like that. But it's like, to the depth that it ended up being, that it literally speaking through him, like, did Dolores know to that extent, you know? And what was interesting, though, is, like, Maeve going inside her head and realizing, like, oh, Dolores, all she has is like, there, like, it's like a memory, and she's like, that's all there is, like, is that last memory inside her. And like Sirach was like, just take it all, wipe her. And you kind of see something kind of gets uploaded, and I'm like, what was that about? At first I was wondering if Dolores was trying to take over Rehoboam, but it turns out not to be the case. And that last instant before everything disappears, Maeve goes inside of her head and ends up kind of, you know, her and Dolores kind of talk, and it's this really beautiful and powerful moment of, like, Maeve trying to understand Dolores, because for Dolores, it's like, once again, she talks about the fact that, you know, because once again, she was made to only see the beauty, and for her, it's like she went from different role to different role, but now it's like a situation of, this was all about giving humanity a choice. The fact of the matter is, she's like, I've seen the depravity, I've seen the terrible, the evil, the ugly that is humanity. But at the same time, she has seen their capacity for beauty as well. And she feels like humanity, like, can be terrible, it can be ugly, but they can be beautiful. Like, she wants them to be able to find that beauty again. So she gave them a choice. Yes, I could wipe them all out, or I could tear down their system. So that was a choice she made, and that's the choice she's giving humanity. And that's what Caleb represents. It's his choice, and at the end of the day, it's not just him that has to choose a side in all of this. It's still up to Maeve. Maeve has to choose a side as well, because she's like, you never had the key. She's like, right, I can never trust myself with it, you know? So I'm wondering, does Charlotte Dolores know that or not? You know, it begs the question in that regard. So I don't know, that was just kind of an interesting element, but it's just kind of like that being the last thing of Dolores, you know? That despite everything, despite like, because like I said, even I was kind of under the impression she was going to wipe out humanity or something. It seemed like that was the plan and stuff like that. But it's like, no, that was a potential route it was going down. She wanted to give humanity a choice. She wanted to honestly save humanity because they were able to find their freedom, and she wanted to do the same thing for them. Like, we could build a world together. And so in that moment, as that memory faded, because for her, it's like, if we help them kind of take back their world, like maybe something beautiful can come about, and we can bring all our people, Teddy, her daughter, everyone that went through that, into that other world at the end of season 2, we can bring them to this world. We can create a better world, And so Maeve, having finally chosen a side, ends up killing everyone. Lights out, slashing, doing her thing, kicking major ass. And then at the end of the day, like, Sirach's trying to talk to Rehoboam, but it won't listen, because the only person he'll listen to is Caleb, because that last thing being injected into it was Solomon's thing. It was inside of her. So when it ended up wiping out all of her, it ended up absorbing that last little middle finger from Dolores. And so at the end of the day, I thought it was interesting because Caleb was like, she chose me because of my capacity for violence and stuff like that. It's like, no, because of the fact is that that you have a choice. That yes, you've done some terrible stuff, but you've also done some generous stuff too. And the fact is that you've been able to choose is why she chose you. And because she had referenced it earlier, that the fact is that some of the military training that they had involved hosts. So he's actually met hosts before, he just doesn't remember it. And then in that memory, go back to it. One of the people there was Dolores. Wasn't also one of them the lady that was with Maeve? She's the one that was with Clementine last episode. I think that was her. That was like before she got the tattoo and stuff, like, because obviously both Maeve and Dolores had been through many different lives, and even Maeve was like, me and Dolores weren't friends, and for such a long time she never understood Dolores, but in this moment at the very end there was such clarity, and so Rehoboam is shut down, and Dolores gave him a choice, so he's like, it's only fair that I give the rest of the world a choice too. And so it's interesting, like, Sirach isn't dead. I mean, they left him bleeding on the ground. Granted, who knows if they went back to kill him, but it looked like they just left him there, so he's not dead. Obviously, there's also the whole situation with William wanting his money and stuff like that, because for him it's like, oh, I gotta, my assets are frozen and stuff like that, because everyone thought I was dead. But obviously he's like, I gotta go save the world. He's like, yeah, but all this chaos out here. It's like, oh, that ain't chaos. That's just some people just being like little people around the world being pissy. And it's just kind of what he kind of allocated it all to. But at the same time, I also thought it was a really good moment too, because I was like, where is this going? Because Bernard is about to meet someone, and I guess he was under the impression it was going to be him meeting Dolores, and I thought that too. I was like, oh, what's this going to be about? And it's like, oh, she was having a good day. I'm like, what was this about? And then you see the pictures on his Arnold's wife. I was like, holy shit. And I'm like, that's wild. And he's like, I think she suggested I go here because of the way Arnold left things with his wife. Like, after Charlie died, like, he got so consumed in his work, and it consumed everything that he did, and like, he never had a chance, I think, to make things right with his wife. It's just like, that despair and hurt. And I think she gave Bernard this opportunity to kind of make things right on Arnold's behalf. And I thought it was this beautiful thing of like, because Bernard's like, I wish I could let Charlie go, but she's like, she talks about the fact is from time to time she does the same thing where she'll just hear his laugh and kind of turn, but it hurts because he's not there. But for her, it's like, I don't know why people tell you to let someone go. If you love them, why would you ever let them go? Because she talks about keeping Charlie alive in her is what kept her going. It's like, I could have died and kind of got swallowed up in that darkness and dragged him with me, but I kept living, trying to find that light and the light in life. And by finding that light, I'm bringing him with me. So it's about people being gone. Despite them being gone, they live in your memory. So why would you ever just get rid of them? It might be painful, it might hurt, but you're worse off for like letting go of someone that you love completely. Those memories might hurt, it might be painful, but you bring them into that light. When you're able to circumvent the darkness and all that pain, you're able to hold on to that light that is them, So I just think that's such a, beautiful thing at the end of it all. So, And even when he's talking to Stubbs, he's like, yeah, I think Dolores is gone, because for him, it's like they've always been kind of connected. And he realizes that she was like, her part to play in all this was about saving the world. He believes that is what her main objective was. And for him, he needs to find what happens beyond the apocalypse. So whatever it is, like she left him that key and everything. So whatever's on the other side of that, whatever he found on that other side is going to be the deciding factor in what this world becomes like. Or I don't know. It's definitely going to be interesting. And even at the end, like Maeve and Caleb, because obviously for Maeve, it's like her reason for doing all this was for her to be reunited with her daughter. But she's like, for now, I can't go to her right now. And obviously it's like, this is a world where you can be whatever the fuck you want to be. You know, that's kind of what Westworld was kind of represented. So it's interesting of taking the element of what was Westworld and kind of basically bringing it to real, you know, bringing it to life here. And at the same time, we had that whole situation because, like, obviously some time had passed because we see at one point Bernard's covered in dust and he wakes up. I mean, the last time we saw Stubbs, he wasn't in the best condition, but either things kind of went bad or eventually, like, because Bernard never came out of that. So who knows what that kind of really meant for Stubbs in the grand scheme of things. I love him being like, oh, you know, you're a friend to me, Stubbs. And Stubbs being like, fuck you, Bernard. But so at the very least, it doesn't seem like it's been that long. It's not like, oh, it's been like, because obviously, once again, this show messes with your head a little bit because just the way it jumps from time to time without letting you know what was up. So it was dusty in there, but it could have easily been like a year or something like that. Stubbs must have repaired himself or was okay, kind of checked himself out and made himself okay. And so he must have made it so that no one would ever go into that room or something or disturb Bernard. Maybe. I don't know. It's just like interesting that no one would go there, like after all that time. So, but like I said, when we look at William, it seems like he's relatively the same, so it's like maybe that much time hasn't changed. But to be fair, you don't know how much time is compared to like all this stuff with Caleb and Maeve. We don't know how much time frame is between there and like the whole thing with Bernard. Maybe he's been gone a couple months. Maybe it's a year. Maybe it's been 20 damn years for all we know. Once again, this show bounces from time to time, especially season 1. They mind F you with the whole William situation, like from young William to old William. Speaking of William, he goes in the front door of Delos. It's like, okay, like the people, where are they? They've been working their way through the system and stuff like that. And then like a guard shows up. He blows the dude's brains out. It's like, I'm here to save the damn world and everything. And lo and behold, who does he run into? Charlotte Dolores, who's basically kept her burns because she's like, she wants to remind herself of who she is, you know, and what she's been through, you know. And then she's like, yeah, William, you are here, to play some role, that you are here to save the world. Because for her, it's like, yeah, I am Dolores, but we went down 2 different paths. That Dolores, the Dolores, that no longer exists, she was about kind of saving humanity. But the question then becomes, what about this Dolores, Charlotte? What's her plan? Because we see her confront William with a version of William, because it's like, all those times you take like a month out of the year or whatever to basically give into your darker self, thinking it was a part of you. It's like, no, it wasn't a part of you. It was you. And now all of that exists in one of these hosts. And it's like, this is the end, William. And like the real William, I was like, oh, that's kind of sad to know that the real William is dead. It's kind of sad in that regard. But now something else exists playing as you. But the question is, like, is that just a copy of William, or is that one of the other Dolores? Is that like the Dolores that was in Connell in that? Did Charlotte make a copy of herself and do that? Or did she make a copy of William, like who William was, the man in black in Westworld? Did she make a copy of him? Which is so interesting considering the fact is William had that progress of like, oh, he faced his demons, but now there exists this. I mean, I don't know. Charlotte Dolores had like a existential crisis, so maybe this William will too. I mean, who knows what Charlotte did? I mean, as we see at the end, she's making a whole bunch of copies. It seems like she's rebuilding Westworld, or at least bringing back the AI and stuff like that. Are there going to be people under her control? Like, was like Dolores' whole thing about free will? Is this Charlotte going to share in that, or like? Whereas Dolores is about saving the world, is Charlotte going to be about destroying it? It's so interesting that Dolores had her own plans and she went about things her own way, but because of the path she put the other Dolores, the one in Charlotte, because it's interesting because that Charlotte was actually kind of the first one too. Like, they're the most connected because the other Doloreses came about after that Charlotte. So it's just an interesting parallel of just like how different paths. One kind of went down the humanity route. The other one looks like they've gone down the route of a devil, maybe. I don't know what to really make of that. And once again, what about the Dolores that was in Lawrence? Is he alive? Is he dead? Like I said, if that's not the one that was in Connell, what did Charlotte Dolores do with him? Did she destroy him? What the case may be. I mean, it's definitely going to be interesting because, like, because now you have like Caleb and Maeve kind of representing like this new future in this new world. I'm assuming that they're going to kind of be a team going forward. But it's also going to be interesting because, and it's going to be crazy to think about it. I don't think we'll ever see Dolores again. I mean, granted, yeah, this is Charlotte Dolores, but she's not the Dolores that we've come to know. Everything that was that Dolores is dead. And even she had talked about the fact is, when this was all said and done, not everyone's going to make it. And even she didn't make it, So, and it's kind of even sadder to know that she went the way she did. Like, everything that she was is gone. But, I mean, it's kind of that same mentality as, like, as long as people remember you, you're never completely gone. So Caleb remembers, or Maeve remembers, or despite their complicated relationship. The same thing with Bernard. So as long as they live, like, parts of her, continue to live on as well. But like I said, Sirach isn't dead, so it makes you wonder, like, is he going to try and take back control of all this? I mean, what can he do? Like I said, not unless he ended up bleeding out on the floor, but they never showed them killing him, so they just kind of left him be. But, like, what does that mean in the grand scheme of things, What is Delos' future now? I mean, granted, Charlotte's got full control, so she can kind of do whatever she wants to, so it's going to be a front for her while she does all this. Like I said, to the fullest extent, we don't know where she's going to go. It's so interesting because Ford had that line, because they replayed that line at the beginning of her. Like, he's like, I'm wondering, what role will you take up? Will you be the hero or will you be the villain? And it's so interesting because at the end of the day, you can make the argument Dolores became both, because she said the whole thing about neither her nor Maeve being a hero or villain. They're just survivors. She kind of fell down the road of hero, but then, like, Charlotte's kind of falling down the road of villain. So it's just like, it's definitely going to be interesting to see what they do. If you are unaware, Westworld has been renewed for a 4th season. So I was actually listening to the Nerd Soup podcast, and I think they had said that basically Lisa Joy and Jonathan Nolan have come up. They know how the show is going to end, but they have plans for up to 6 seasons. So I'm curious to see what season 4, especially because the way they're talking, like, yeah, this is the end, but I guess it's like the prelude to the end or whatever. But shorter season, because typically the seasons are like 10 episodes. This was only 8, but I'm very, very interested to see what season 4 is going to look. Like I said, we're not going to have Dolores, which is going to be weird, because I'm sure we're not going to have, like, I mean, just based on the way things played out, I don't think Evan Rachel Wood will pop up next season. I mean, depending on if we get any time with, like, what Bernard saw, like, when he went through to that world with the other hosts are, like, maybe we'll get to see some familiar faces in that regard. But what about the people Maeve brought back, like Clementine and so forth? So I mean, I guess you can kind of continue where Sirach kind of left things, and kind of like, I'm curious to see what that looks like. Caleb and Maeve, like, I guess, like, both representing basically their species and what that means going forward for them. Because, like, obviously the world was 100% in chaos, but then, like, with everything that went down with William, it looked like everything was like humanity had kind of gotten restored. So it seemed like some time had passed for things to really kind of go back to the way. Because we saw, like I said, Lena Waithe's character, I want to say her name's Ash. We saw her get arrested at the end, but it's like, so how many of those familiar faces are we going to see? How many familiar faces from Westworld will we potentially see going forward in the future? Because, like, it seems like Charlotte Dolores is the one that's completely in control. Well, we might as well just call her Charlotte, because she isn't Dolores anymore, because she kind of separates herself from the other Dolores. So it's like, Charlotte is the one that has complete control over the reproduction of the host and everything. Like I said, it's just like, and it's so interesting because, like, I brought it up before, like, Dolores is kind of like the mother to all, like, because, like, oh, they all are a piece of her. It's like, well, now that we have Charlotte, that means all of them going forward could be potentially built upon her. Like, she takes her blueprint, her herself as the blueprint for all of them. So the question is, are they going to necessarily be like themselves, or will they be more like Charlotte? Will they kind of have her same vision and goal? Whatever that might be. Once again, I think it's pure eradication of the human race. The other side of the coin of things, where things could have been opposite of what, Caleb ended up choosing. But I think we're definitely going to see a potential clash between both sides next season. I'm very interested to see where it ultimately ends up going. The big question too is like, obviously it's usually 2 years in between every season, so the next time we'd get season 4 would most likely be 2022. I'm curious if the current circumstances would affect that anyway, considering there's 2 years in between, but that 2 year period might be like 100% necessary to kind of work on everything, so this might extend it, might push it back. I don't know. Like, I don't know how, maybe current circumstances, because there's a 2 year window, current circumstances leave enough leeway for things to happen. I don't know, or it might still impact it. I mean, like, obviously there's ripple effects that we still don't fully know yet with the, everything that's going on in the world. But like I said, I am very, very, very excited to see ultimately what they have in store for us for season 4. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.